Okay, thank you for inviting me to talk, Dan, and I am going to talk about something that's an old-fashioned agile that's kind of hardly done anywhere, but to try and talk about it as if it's a living thing, because it really is something that we've been doing where I work anyway, consistently. So, let's see. This is the thing saying you should use the application. Right. So, I became a software developer in the 80s. That was a long time before agile ways of working, and there was very different technology. And as Dan was talking about on the first day, yeah, builds could take a long time. We didn't really write any automated tests of that kind. It was a different world with different problems, and the main reason I became interested in different ways of in working in a different way and in extreme programming was because I used to work away for years, it seemed, and never deliver anything because things got cancelled or they just got shipped off to somebody else and you never knew what happened to the code you wrote. So I read an article about extreme programming in 1999 and it seemed like it might not work. But also I knew that what we were doing didn't work. So I thought, well, it's worth giving it a shot. And I sought out the Extreme Tuesday Club in London and met people there where I joined an XP team. And I did XP as a programmer for a few years. But why was the name Extreme, which is, XP is short for extreme programming. People don't often call it extreme programming because it's embarrassing usually to say, oh yes, I'm extreme. But the thing is that genuinely it is extreme and you should not be embarrassed to say we want to do better, we want to make it, we want to push hard to make what we do the best. That extreme programming, at the time the word was associated with snowboarding and extreme sports. And actually, extreme programming is about making it safer to develop code in an environment, and it's where the practices like test-driven development came from, and the idea that you could have confidence if you worked more collaboratively in a team. So it's got a basic thing behind it, which is that you're always trying to turn the dials up on good practice. So if you know about a good practice, think about making it even more extreme, and that will help you to be able to deliver change quickly, because extreme programming is all about being able to change quickly. Sadly, when I go to a lot of organizations or meetups, what I find is that, well, at meetups it seems like hardly any developers are there. At many conferences that are agile conferences, the developers have gone somewhere else, they're not around. And the things that people say is they say things like, oh yeah, we tried pairing once, but it didn't work. Or we have a few automated tests, we don't really run them. Or we tried to automate our build, but it's still kind of languishing there, many manual steps. Or yeah, we shuffle the code around a bit, you know, rename a few classes and methods, but we're not really refactoring mercilessly. I mean, the XP name for the practice is refactor mercilessly, so you should. What has happened in the industry is that software developers have kind of gone away into different movements, so there's been a bit of a splintering. And there's been, so this is just a kind of graph of Google Trends, DevOps against XP, and XP line is trending down and DevOps is going up. So DevOps people are really interested in making things slicker, being able to move code around more quickly, bringing agility to the way that we ship code and build code so that you can write code without having to worry about how it gets from A to B. You've also got people who are in the kind of software craftsmanship movement, and they're much more concerned with building the skills to write good tests, to come up with good designs. And then you've got a bunch of people who are really interested in building new products and getting value out there. And what I think is that XP brings all those three things together. So I'm going to talk about XP, but people tend to go, oh yeah, that's agile technical practices. But to me, XP is much more than agile technical practices. It's where you join agile technical practices together with actually working to deliver value. And so it shouldn't just be thought of as, oh, XP equals TDD and refactoring. It's like XP is a lot more than that. And XP can give you a lot more value if you look at it as a whole thing instead of going, it's something you slot inside Scrum, because it isn't something you slot inside Scrum. So this is a bunch of XP practices. You probably won't be able to read the writing. This is like a screenshot, like a shot out of the first XP book, Extreme Programming Explained in 1999. And it has things in it which you think, yeah, like obviously it's got things like testing. Yeah, that's a good thing. But it's also got some weird things in it. And it's got things like 40-hour week and collective ownership and pair programming and metaphor. What's happened though, because obviously this is kind of a long time ago, is that some things caught on, and like loads of people do them. Other things kind of died out, hardly anybody does them, and other things kind of turned into something else, so they've evolved over that time. They're not really the thing that was being talked about in 1999. So what I thought would be interesting, or maybe interesting, is to talk about XP as we practice it in the organisation where I work, and the kind of things that we do. Now, I'm just going to go over here, just for a change, because I can read easier from this side. So I wrote some Post-it notes, and I put the green ones in the middle. This is kind of what you'd think of as, yes, definitely core XP. XP covers this. And the core things are things like on-site customer, collective ownership, user stories, test first, pairing, design improvement, velocity, continuous integrations. Those are kind of normal things. But the XP that was written about in the 90s didn't really have anything to say about infrastructure or support or user experience or retrospectives even. And so we have added things, and we've tried to think about applying the values and principles in XP, what helps us to deliver change quickly, and what helps us to turn the dials up on doing that. And we've practiced some things that you'd think, yeah, that's like an old school XP practice, and then we throw in other things that are not an old school XP practice. And we think that that's modern XP. So one thing that I think is a really core idea between in XP is that it is not a phasey kind of thing. It's not like first we do the planning and then we do the implementation and then we do the releasing. We're always doing some releasing, and we're always doing some planning, and we're always doing some coding. And actually it turns out that you spend, if you're in an extreme programming team, sadly you probably spend less of your time programming because you're doing a lot of other things. In terms of you're talking to people to find out what's the right thing to build, you're researching potential options, and you're making sure you understand what feedback you're getting from the live systems. So there's a kind of aliveness to it, and it's not really a kind of phased approach. So this is an old school XP practice, pair programming, and it's one thing that's very core to us. But the reason it's core to our team is because we believe that collective ownership helps us to move fast. And so pair programming is valuable in that more than one person knows how the code works, and more than one person has contributed to the design, so that at any time you will find that somebody in the team knows how it works. So we practice pair programming by rotating pairs every day. And we agree in the morning, we have a stand-up. But the stand-up's mostly about who's going to pair with who and on what. And then during the day, we'll change around. But what we've found is, and in the last year, we've been doing a different practice, mob programming. So mob programming isn't in the XP book, but it's totally aligned with, if somebody thought of it at the time, they would have put it in. So the idea with mob programming is that you have a group of people, they're all working on the same code, and they're switching it around. So rather like you would do in a code dojo. Has anybody been to a code dojo where you've kind of done a randory style? So mob programming is like that. You actually have a timer, you switch driver, and the way we've got it set up here is we have 2 screens, and the driver has a different view than everybody else. And everybody else is looking at a big view, and they look at a smaller view, and then we kind of switch around. But what we found is even with mob programming, we talked to the guy who came up with the concept, who worked in a team, and how they did it, and then we evolved it. So we don't really do whole team mob programming much, and we do a lot of cross-team mob programming. So we end up with mini mobs of people from more than one team working on things that intersect those teams. Then, I don't know how controversial this is, and I don't also know whether, given that we've been acquired, whether we'll carry on doing this, but there is no staging. There's development boxes and live. Everybody has access to live, and the idea is that with that trust comes an accountability. You know that you don't just press, deploy and then go and have a cup of tea. You better make sure that you're checking the monitors, seeing there's not any dramatic impact on the state of the systems. And so we have monitors all around, and actually these lines here, they're the deploy lines. And anybody, including junior programmers who've just joined us last week, can be in a pair and be deploying. We also, all the developers, we don't have a separate group of people who maintain our infrastructure. We maintain our own infrastructure. So there isn't this layering of people, and there isn't this layering of access to things. The other place where there isn't layering is there is no buffering between us and the rest of the users in the business. So we have to, if somebody says this is not working, then we have to fix it. And if somebody says, I would like to sell a new feature, we need to discuss it with them to try and figure out if it's worth doing, and help them figure out whether it's worth doing, and help them figure out whether we could measure to see if is there something very small we could do to test if there's a market. So every day we have one person from each team goes and sits upstairs with the rest of the business, and we take turns, and it's a thing that we all expect everybody to do, is to go and speak to people in the business, and that's how we work out what we're going to research to do next. We don't have any business analysts, we don't have any product owners, we don't have any testers. These are all kind of intermediary roles. So the developers do everything. They are truly kind of broadly skilled people. And so here's a picture of one team. The teams tend to be small because we don't have all these different kinds of specialists. So a team can be 4 people or 5 people. It's not going to be 10 people. And each person takes a certain amount of story research to do. They go and talk to people in the business, but then they look into the technical options. They go back to their team and say, hey, here's how I think we'll do it. And then what we do is we're the people who propose to the rest of the stakeholders in the business, this is what we think each team should be working on next. So we have a little queue for each team, and we say, oh, this is the 1 or 2 things we'll be doing in the next week. But it's not a huge amount of work, because we actually have the rest of our time is prioritized by us to do things like technical improvement, improve the infrastructure. So there's only a very small proportion, I'd say 30 to 40% is spent on new stories, and the rest of it is spent on taking care of the existing systems to make sure they're running smoothly. This picture, I know it's a bit dark, it's the view from New York into our office. So we do use Hangout a lot. We are a global company. We have offices all over the world. And that means that we do have to talk to people that are not in our London office. It's not, even though we do have index cards and things, very old school XP practice, on our boards, we also have electronic versions of those things. And we have to do that so we can explain them to people who are not sitting right with us. but we try to make it very accessible for everybody to kind of join. So it's one thing that is crucial for us is that everybody should get time, a headspace time to do their own research and learning. So all developers in our team have 1 day a week that they can spend on whatever they like, and it doesn't have to be related to the product, and they're just learning whatever they think. And it's really hard to find a picture of somebody learning. So this is a random picture. This is a picture of Thomas. He's doing his gold card. He's randomly sitting at this table we call the French cafe table, but most people just sit at their desks and you can't really tell if they're doing it. And you can pair on a gold card if you want. Some people were pairing on a gold card yesterday. A gold card is what we call this research time. And so there's something that this fosters, this, if there isn't somebody managing you all and there isn't somebody telling you what to do all the time, you do have to kind of track what you're doing so you can figure out what you can do next. So you can tell that this is not, maybe you can't even tell what it is, but what you might be able to tell is that it's not set up by a project manager to manage people's hours. It's a set of magnets, and it's a set of magnets and games characters. And it's the way that we figure out, did we get our gold card? I want to make sure I get all my gold cards, my research time. It's also, are we staying on top of the technical improvement tasks that we need to do? So this green list of cards, they're cards that we never expose to the business, but they are the things that we need to do in terms of improving our code base. Because if you've been developing products from 2006 to now, you're going to have some old code lying around, and it does need to be cleaned up and sorted out. So the green magnets represent those. Then there are pictures of magnifying glasses. Those are days when we're spending time looking into and researching business-facing problems. There are some question marks on the board. You won't be able to see all this, but question marks are, I've no idea really. It was kind of a mishmash day. I don't know what I did. But if we have a lot of that, then the team's going to go, something weird is going on. We need to get together and make sure we kind of stop doing this. So we use this every day. We put what did we do yesterday in terms of magnets. These are types of work, if you're thinking in a Kanban way. And then we take a photograph and we use it in our retrospective. So this is a picture of us having a retrospective. This is, the team gets together. They're looking to think, how can we work more effectively? And they've got actually printed out on the table these photographs of the board. And they use that, and this bit above here is like a diary. So every day we write. Don't read the words too carefully in case there might be swearing and things like this. But the point being, the team has the power to decide what they measure, what they don't measure, and what's useful to them and what's not useful to them. And what I'd hope is that Agile ways of working should be like this and not be kind of something where I had to do something because the Scrum Master said so kind of thing. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that because we take collective ownership of the code, we also take collective ownership of our process. So there's very much a sense that people take turns to do things. So people will facilitate meetings for other teams, and people will look for volunteers to do other things. So I've just come from our Tech Talk session, which was run by one of the developers, and then somebody else will run the next one. But the idea is it's not relying on a special kind of role to make things happen. So we try to have hardly any specialists. And if we do have some specialists, but all of those specialists, their job is to work with the teams to teach the teams. It's not a case of the specialist does a special thing. And that means there are fewer bottlenecks in our way of working. So the last thing, and I think this is important because so many people can feel that they only know one tiny part of a system. We know what we do over here, but we don't know what those guys do over there. We have the opportunity where we work to rotate around, and I think it's quite important to be able to have that feeling of choice, that you can move and work on other people's code and then gradually make it your own and understand different parts of the product. So we have a few ways that we do this. One thing is literally every 3 months I ask people, do you want to move around? And people say yes or no. And there are some people who always say no, but then they have new people who come and work with them. So they literally haven't moved their chair, but they're in a different team. And we also have people, we do this where we do exchanges outside the organisation. So we've been having people go and work with, say, 7 Digital or Tim Group and do swaps. So we've had people come work with us and we go and work with them. And again, this keeps things lively and interesting. We're always thinking about new technology and working with different people, so it doesn't get too stuck in. So if you think about it, if you were pair programming with the same 3 people, you might hate them after a while. So you'd have to kind of mix it up, otherwise you kind of get to know them too well. And so I'm going to come towards more of a bit of a summary now. So these practices, if you were implementing them where you work, you might do something different, and that will be fine. The idea is that you are trying to think about what will help us to deliver change more quickly, but to think more out of the box, to think more openly, and not to just go, in the practice book it says do this, so therefore we will do exactly that, but to be a bit more adaptive about how you think you're going to work. Now, I think that from a business point of view, the benefits of XP are that we're able to deliver value sustainably. So there's this kind of continuous pace sense of it. You know, we can always deliver a certain number of features. And once the business knows that, they then trust us to work out what are the other things we need to know. And they don't inquire, you know, what are you doing today every day? They know that we can deliver value and we're delivering it at a good rate. And also, I think if you change things a lot and you do things in very small slices, very small steps, you end up with change tolerant systems. So if you're slicing things as leanly as possible, you do end up with this kind of systems where they become easier to change. There are some people benefits as well. So I don't know if anyone's read this book, Drive by Daniel Pink. Is anybody? A few people. So I think one of the important parts of it, he talks about the idea of people having choice and being able to choose what they do and how they do it. And so I think that XP allows people to have more choice over what they do. They are more connected with the business that they work in. They have to understand how their business makes money. And they are able to develop skills, and in all of the kind of moving around and collective ownership and being generalists rather than specialists mean you are able to acquire lots of different kinds of skills and variety in those skills. And so that, I think, motivates people to come to work, because they feel if I'm constantly learning, I'm in a good environment, and especially if I'm learning from other people and I'm in an environment of other learners and I can learn from my colleagues. So this is really, I think, a key benefit to XP. So to summarise what XP is about, I think it's really about continuous value, but doing it safely. One of the values in XP, because there's 5 values, one of them is courage. And the thing is, what helps you be brave is that you do things carefully and well, so that you know that you can deploy and do what might be dangerous things if you didn't have a lot of discipline. So I think that you need courage, and that's an essential part, but that informs the rest of your practice. If you want to be able to be courageous, then you need to be thinking, how can we do it better? And it's not just something like, I mentioned the retrospectives, it's not something where you think, oh yeah, retrospectives, we go in a room, we think about better practice, and then we go away and don't think about it for the rest of the time. We're always thinking about it, and it's not. That's one of the things where I feel it's kind of a batched up practice, where it would be nice if we could be more fluid around how we reflect upon things. So I've probably been slightly quick there, but never mind. Thank you for listening. And I don't know if we're allowed to take questions, or are they saving them for the panel? How do you do it?
Yeah, we've got a panel in a minute, so please post your questions in the app.
Yes. Oh, yes. And do feedback in the app, please. Thank you.